This is constellationofwords.com, learning about the world of the stars above us. In regards to Libra, explore the etymology and symbolism of the constellations, the scales, the claws. Urania's mirror, 1825. The contents include clues to the meaning of this celestial feature, the fixed stars in this constellation, and the history of the constellation. The clues to the meaning of this celestial feature. Astrea was the last of the gods to stay on earth. As mankind became wicked, she ascended to heaven to become the constellation Virgo. The scales of justice she carried became the nearby constellation Libra. Originally, the Greeks saw the scales of balance as being the claws of the scorpion. They named Libra from the equal balance of this month because on September 24th, the sun makes the equinox while running through this sign. Whence Lucan also says Civil War 4.58 to the scales of just Libra, 7th century AD, page 106 in the Etymologies of Isidore of Seville. The word Libra, from Latin Libra, plural librae, Greek lithra, a weighing scale, is related to the words level, lyra, deliberate, equilibrium, from aquis, equal, plus libra. Litra, name of a Greek weight and coin. Litra, or liter, a metric unit of volume. Librate, land worth a pound a year. The word used to mean to vibrate as a balance, to be in equipoise, to waver between one thing and another. The process of liberating, or swinging from side to side is spoken as libration. From the immemorial, the scales have been the principal attribute of justice, it being impossible to even a little right with any quantity of wrong. Brewer's Book of Myth and Legend, page 253. The scales are balanced when they are just even, level. The words just and justice come from the Indo-European root use, law. Derivatives, jural, meaning law. Jurist, jury, abjure, to renounce under oath, forswear. Adjure, to command or enjoin solemnly as under oath. Conjure, to summon up energy for a specific purpose. Injury, juridical, jurisconsult, jurisdiction, jurisprudence. Objurgate, perjure. These words from Latin, jus, eus, stem, ear, law, and its derivative, errare, to pronounce a ritual formula or swear. Just, from Latin justus, iustus, or justus, just, justice. And names, Justin, Justina, and Justice. The word balance comes from Latin bi, two, twice, plus Latin lengths. Genitive lances, plate, dish, scale of weighing machine. A pound is made of 12 ounces. Troy weights, maybe. And thus it is considered as a type of perfect weight because it consists of as many ounces as there are months in the year. It is called a pound, Libra, because it is independent, liber, and contains all the aforementioned weights within it. The symbol for the British currency called the pound, with a horizontal line, and the pound weight is also known as the lira sign. The pound currency unit was so named because it was originally the value of 1 pound tower weight of fine silver. Both symbols derive from librum, the basic Roman unit of weight, in turn derived from the Latin word pender or pendere for scales or balance. A weight or pondus is so called because it hangs, pender, balanced in the scales. Hence, all the term pensum, something weighed. The term pondus is loosely used for 1 pound, Libra. Hence, also the depondius or dupondius is named As if it were duopondera, 2 pounds, this term has been retained in usage up to today. Steward, dispensator, is the name for a person entrusted with the administration of money, and such a one is a dispensator because in former times the person who dispensed money would not count it but weigh it out. Appender. A measure of wool, pensum for women, is named from weighing pender, past participle pensis, whence also the words rations or pensa and expense, impensa. From the same pendera, to weigh or pay, comes from dispensator, distributing cashier, and in our accounts we write expensum or expense, and therefrom the first pensio or payment, and likewise the second and any others, and dispensium or loss by distribution, for this reason that money is wont to become less in the dispendendo, distributing of the payments, compendium meaning saving, which is made when its compenditor is weighed altogether. Varro on the Latin language, 1st century AD, page 171. Latin pendera comes from the Indo-European root pen, to draw, stretch, spin, derivatives, spend, spider, related to the verb pendera, to hang, let hang, scales, hang in the balance. Arachne, the spinster spider hanged herself. Spin, spindle, a slender, tapered rod for twisting and holding thread in spinning. Spinster, painter, a rope attached to the bow of a boat, used for tying up, as when docking or towing. Pansy, French, pensée, thought. The flower resembles a little face crinkled up in thought. From Latin pensare, to weigh and ponder about. Penchant, pinned, pending, pendent, pendentive, pendulous, pendulum, pencil, pensile, hanging loosely, suspended. Pension, pensive, peso, poise, to carry or hold in equilibrium or balance. Antependium, a decorative hanging for the front of an altar, lectern or pulpit. Append, appendectomy. Appendix, a human appendix hangs at the end of the large intestine. Avoirdupois, weight or heaviness, especially of a person. Compendium, a short, complete summary, an abstract. Compensation, counterpoise, depend, independence, independent, dispense, expend, expensive, impend, penthouse, perpend, to consider carefully, ponder, perpendicular, prepense, contemplated or arranged in advance, premeditated, malice prepense, propend, to have a propensity, incline or tend, recompense, stipend, suspend, vilipend, treat with contempt, despise, penia, lack, deficiency, as leukopenia, geoponic, agriculture or farming, lithopone, a white pigment, span, to bind or fetter, spancel, a rope used to hobble an animal, as a sheep, spanner, span, the extent or measure of space, the span of life determined by the fates, lifespan, spangle, sparkling object, pound, ponder, ponderous, equiponderate, preponderate, spontaneous, as in the names Spencer, Aspen, Pentagon, and Pennsylvania. The head of an obsolete modern constellation, Tertus Solitarius, encroaches onto one of the scales of Libra, the one with the alpha star, Zubin al-Janubi. Tertus Solitarius, the solitary thrush, was a constellation that was never widely recognized and was replaced by other birds, including Noctua, the owl, and the hermit bird. The constellation was located on the end of the tail of Hydra, the water snake, just below Libra, the scales. Its stars have been incorporated back into Hydra. Manilius says the scales represent balancing night with the length of day. This particular scale, alpha, might represent the night scale. Noctua means night owl. The words ostrich and thrush comes from the same root. Ostrich, avis, plus late Latin struthio, Greek strathus, tertus, and thrush from Greek strasthus. It is said that the Egyptian goddess Mayat used an ostrich feather to measure the weight of the heart or soul, in which a person's heart or soul lies in one pan and the ostrich feather of the goddess Mayat in the other. In earlier times, Libra was represented not by a balance, but as the claws of a scorpion, Scorpius. At first, Scorpio held the scales in his claw, or his claws were the scales. The Zubin prefix in the names of the stars of Libra is from the Arabic word for claw. The Romans created the constellation. Chalet, claws, was a common Roman title for Libra, but as Ian Ridpath in Star Tales explains, the idea of a balance in this area did not originate with the Romans. The Sumerians knew this area as Ziba Ana, the balance of heaven, 2,000 years BC, and where no doubt the Arabs got the name Zubin. Hence, it seems that the Romans revived a constellation that existed before Greek times. Allen from Star Names says that the sacred books of India mentions this constellation as Tula, the Tamil Tulam or Tolam, a balance. Greek has the plural word talenton, pair of scales, balance, related to Sanskrit tula, balance. Tulayati, lifts up, weighs, from the Indo-European root tela, to lift, support, weigh, with derivatives referring to measured weights and thence to money and payment. Derivatives, telemen, a figure of a man used as a supporting pillar, from Greek talenton, pair of scales, balance, a weight. Toll, a fixed charge or tax for a privilege, especially for passage across a bridge or along a road. Philately, stamp collecting. Tolerate, from Latin tolerare, to bear, endure. Talion, a punishment identical to the offense as the death penalty for murder. Retaliate, from Latin talio, reciprocal punishment in kind, possibly something paid out. Talent, from Greek talenton, any of several specific weights of gold or silver, hence the sum of money represented by such a weight. Ablation, from ab, away, plus latus, carried. Collate, to examine and compare carefully in order to note points of disagreement. Dilatory, dis plus latus, intended to delay. Elate, elated, used as the past participle stem of effer, to carry up, from fair, to carry. Exultantly, proud and joyful. Elative, elation, the act of inferring or drawing conclusions. Illative, drawing conclusions. Legislator, lex, law, plus later, bearer, from lattice. Oblate, prelate, prolate, relate, sublate, superlative, translate. These words from Latin latus, carried, borne, used as the suppletive past participle of fare, to bear. Dilate, Latin dilatare, literally to spread widely apart, from latus or latus, wide. Lateral, latitude, Latin for latitudo, breadth, width, from latis, broad. Tola or tula, a unit of weight used in India, from Sanskrit tool, tula, scales, balance, weight. Extol, to praise highly or exalt. Atalanta means equal in weight, derived from Greek atalantos. Atalanta was a fierce huntress. She said she would marry anybody who could beat her in a foot race, a competition. I speculate that Latin tela, a web, from the stem of texere, to weave, might fit here. The word bears a phonetic similarity to tele, word above, and could explain the cognates of pendir, to weigh, like a spider, and spin. Derivatives of tela, web, text, textile, tissue, context, texture, subtle, sub, beneath, plus tela, web, technical, from text, to weave. The lex talionis, the law of retaliation, is a theory of retributive justice which says that proper punishment should be equal to the wrong suffered. The most common expression of lex talionis is an eye for an eye. In the Bible, Daniel chapter 5, verse 27, tekel can mean weighed or shekel. Tekel, you have been weighed on the balances and found wanting. Spiders, arania, are vermin of the air, aer, named from the air that is their nourishment. They spin out a long thread from their little body and constantly attentive to their webs, never leave off working on them, maintaining a perpetual suspension in their own piece of craftsmanship. The astrological influences of the constellation given by Manilius. Balancing night with the length of day when after a year's space we enjoy the new vintage of the ripened grape. The scales will bestow the employment of weights and measures and a sun to emulate the talents of Palamids, who first assigned numbers to things, and to these numbers names, fixed magnitudes, and individual symbols. He will also be acquainted with the tables of law, abstruse legal points, and words denoted by compendious signs. He will know what is permissible and the penalties incurred by doing what is forbidden. In his own house, he is a people's magistrate, holding lifelong office. Under no other sign would Servius Sulpicius Rufus, circa 106 through 46 BC, extolled as the greatest of jurists by Cicero, more fittingly have been born, who in interpreting the law framed legislation of his own. Indeed, whatever stands in dispute and needs a ruling, the pointer of the balance will determine. Manilius, Astronomica, 1st century AD, Book 4, page 239. Libra is associated with the scales of Maat, an ancient Egyptian goddess. Matthew, the tax collector, is the seventh apostle corresponding to the sign Libra. Tax collectors used scales to measure merchandise. Mathematical precision is needed for weighing and measuring. Some scholars have connected the name of Palamides with Palam, palm of the hand. Libra is stamped on the coins of Palmyra. The palms of the hands are used like scale pans of balance to judge weights. History of the Constellation from Star Names, 1889, by Richard H. Allen. The Scale of Night. Silently with the stars ascended. Longfellow's Occultation of Orion. Libra, the balance or scales, is the Italian Libra, and Balancia, the French balance, the German wage. Bayer's wag and Bode's wage, W-A-A-G-E, but the Anglo-Saxons said wage, W-A-E-G-E, and pund, and the Anglo-Normans pays, P-E-I-S-E, all meaning the scales or a weight. The early Greeks did not associate its stars with a balance, so that many have thought it substituted in comparatively recent times for the chalet, the claws of the scorpion or Scorpius, that previously had been known as a distinct portion of the double sign. Hyginus characterized it as Dimidia pars Scorpionis, and Ptolemy, counting 8 components in the 2 divisions of his Cali or Cali, claws, Boreas, and Notios, with 9 amorphoti. Aratus also knew it under that title, writing of it as a dim sign, Phaon Epides, though a great one, Megalus Caelus. Eratosthenes included the stars of the claws with those of our Scorpius and called the whole Scorpios, but alluded to the Calai, as did Hipparchus, although with him the latter also were Zugon or Zugos, these words becoming common for our Libra and turned by codices of the 9th century into Zikos, Zichos. They were the equivalents of the Latin jugum or jugum, the yoke or beam of the balance, first used as a stellar title by Geminos, who with Varro mentioned it as the sign of the autumnal equinox. Ptolemy wrote that these Greek titles indiscriminately, and so did the Latin poets, the three, Shale, Shala, Chele, Jugum, or Libra. Although the scientific writers of Rome all adhered to Libra, and such has been its usual title from their day, the ancient name was persistent. However, for the Latin Almagest of 1551 gave a star as Enjugo Siva Shales, and Flamsteed used it in his description of Libra's stars. The statement, often seen that the constellation was invented when on the equinox and so represented the equality of day and night, was current even with Manilius. The day and night are weighed in Libra scales. Equal a while, repeated by James Thomson in the autumn of his seasons. Libra weighs in equal scales the year, by Edward Young in his Imperium Pelagi, apostrophizing his king. The balance George from thine, which weighs the nations, learns to weigh, more accurate the night and day, and by Longfellow in his poet calendar for September. I bear the scales when hang in equipoise, the night and day. This idea gave rise to the occasional title noctipares, yet Libra is rarely figured on an even balance, but as described by Milton, where to fiend looked up and knew his mounted scale aloft. The Romans claimed that it was added by them to the original 11 signs, which is doubtless correct insofar as they were concerned in its modern revival as a distinct constellation, for it first appears as Libra in classical times in the Julian calendar, which Caesar, as Pontifex Maximus, took upon himself to form 46 BC, aided by Flavius, the Roman scribe, and Sosigenes, the astronomer from Alexandria. Some have associated Andrew Marvell's line, outshining Virgo on the Julian star, with Libra, but this unquestionably referred to the comet of 43 BC that appeared soon after, and, as Augustus asserted, in consequence of Caesar's assassination in September of that year, being utilized by the emperor and Caesar's friends to carry his soul to heaven. This comet perhaps was the same that has since appeared in 531, 1106, and 1680, and that may return in 2255. Metals still in existence show Libra held by a figure that Spence thought represented Augustus as the dispenser of justice, thus recalling Virgil's beautiful allusion in his first Georgic to the constellation's place in the sky. Addressing the emperor, whose birthday coincided with the sun's entrance among the stars of the claws, he suggested them as a proper resting place for his soul when, after death, he should be inscribed on the roll of the gods. So, intimating that the place was then vacant, the scorpion having contracted his claws to make room for his neighbor, but subsequently he wrote, Libra die somnic pairs ubi fecerit Horus, and a few lines further on tells of 12 constellations. Milton has a reference in Paradise Lost to Libra's origin, where the Eternal, to prevent such horrid fray, hung forth in heaven his golden scales, yet seen betwixt Astrea and the Scorpion sign. and Homer's "The Eternal Father hung his golden scales aloft" is similar, but although doubtless the original of Milton's verse, probably is not a reference to our Libra, for the Greek poet very likely antedated the knowledge of it in his country, and is supposed to have known but few of our stellar figures at all events, has alluded to but few in either the Iliad or the Odyssey. Bayer said that the Greeks called it stathmos, representing the distance between two stations on the Persian royal road, or a day's march, equal to about 5 Persian parasangs, or about 28 kilometers, a waybeam, a stator or stator, a weight, while theon used for it the old Sicilian litra and litrae, which originally signifying a weight, became the Roman Libra. Ampelius called it mokos or mochos, after the inventor of the instrument, and Virgo's title Austria, the starry goddess. The Greek dike has sometimes been applied to these stars as the impersonation of justice, whose symbol was the scales. Addison devoted the 100th number of the Tatler, that of the 29th of November, 1709, to that sign in the heavens which is called by the name of balance, and to his dream thereof, in which he saw the goddess of justice descending from the constellation to regulate the affairs of men, the whole a very beautiful rendering of the ancient thought connecting the Virgin Astrea with Libra. He may have been thus inspired by recollections of his student days at Oxford, where he must often have seen this sign as a judge in full robes, sculptured on the front of Merton College. Manilius, using the combined title, wrote of it in much the same way as the influence over the legal profession. This ruled at Servius's birth, who first gave our laws a being, a reference to Servius Sulpicius Rufus Lamonia, the great Roman lawyer, pupil, and friend of Cicero. Cicero himself used jugum, as though it were well known, and with evident intention of upsetting Caesar's claim to its invention, wrote, Romam in jugo cum esset luna, natum esse dicebat. The sacred books of India mention it as Tula, the Tamil, Tulam, or Tolam, a balance, and on the zodiac of that country it is a man bending on one knee and holding a pair of scales. But Varaha Mahira gave it as Juga or Juka, from Zugon, and so a reflex of Greek astronomy, which we know came into India early in our era, but he also called it fire, perhaps a recollection of its early altar form mentioned further on. In China, it was Shouxing, the star of longevity, but later, copying our figure, it was Tianqing, the celestial balance, and that country had a law for the annual regulation of weights, supposed to have been enacted with some reference to this sign. In the early solar zodiac, it was the crocodile or dragon, the national emblem. Manetho and Achilles Tatios said that Libra originated in Egypt. It plainly appears on the Dendera planisphere and elsewhere simply as a scale beam, a symbol of the nilometer. Kircher gave its Coptic Egyptian title as Lambadia, Statio Propitiationis. The Hebrews are said to have known it as Maznaim, a scale beam, Ricoles Miznaim, inscribing it. Some thought on the banners of Asher, although others claimed Sagittarius for this tribe, asserting that Libra was unknown to the Jews and that its place was indicated by their letter Ta, which still others claimed Virgo for Asher and Sagittarius for Joseph. The Syrians called it Masata, which Ricoli gave as Masater, and the Persians Tarazu or Tarazuk. all signifying Libra, the Persian sphere showing a human figure lifting the scales in one hand and grasping a lamb in the other, this being the usual form of a weight for a balance in the early East. Arabian astronomers following Ptolemy knew these stars as Al-Zubana, the claws, or in the dual, Al-Zubanatan, as Al-Zubanatane, degenerating in Western use to the Azubine of the 1515 Almagest. But later on, when influenced by Rome, they became Al-Kafatan, the trays of the balance, and Al-Mizan, the scale beam, Bayer attributing the latter to the Hebrews. This appeared in the Alphonsine tables and elsewhere as Al-Misan, Al-Mizin, Mizin, Schickard writing it Midsanen. Kircher, however, said that wazn, weight, is the word that should be used instead of zubana. Riccoli adopting this in his Vaznes Shemali and Vaznaganubi or Vaznaganubi, respectively, applied it to northern and southern scale as well as to their Lucidae. Libra is stamped on the coins of Palmyra as also on those of Pythagoras, Queen of Pontus. While it seems impossible to trace with any certainty the date of formation of our present figure and its place of origin, yet there was probably some figure here earlier than the claws and formed in Chaldea in more shapes than one. Indeed, Ptolemy asserted that it was from that country, while Italer and modern critics say the same. Brown thinks that its present symbol, generally considered a representation of the beam of the balance, shows the top of the archaic Euphratean altar located in the zodiac next preceding Scorpio, Ara. The altar is below Scorpio and figured on gems, tables, and boundary stones alone or in a pair. Miss Clerk recalls the association of the seventh month, Tashritu, with this seventh sign and with the holy mound, Tolku, designating the biblical Tower of Babel, surmounted by an altar. The stars in this constellation, Alpha, Mu, Z, Delta, Beta, Chi, Zeta, and Nu, well showing a circular altar. Sometimes this Euphratean figure was varied to that of a censer, and frequently to a lamp. Strassmeyer confirming this by his translation of an inscription as Die Lampiels Neuro, the solar lamp, synonymous with Bir, B-I-R, the light, also found for the sky figure. In this connection, it will be remembered that another of the names for our Ara, A-R-A, a reduplication of the zodiacal altar, was Pharos, or Pharos, the great lamp or lighthouse of Alexandria, one of the seven wonders of the world. This lamp also has been found shown on boundary stones as held in the scorpion's claws, and we see the same idea even as late as the Farnese globe and the Hyginus of 1488, where the scales have taken the place of the lamp. When the altar, censer, and lamp were in the course of time forgotten or removed to the south, the claws were left behind and perhaps extended till they in turn were replaced by Libra. Miss Clerk additionally writes, the eighth sign is frequently doubled, and it is difficult to avoid seeing in the pair of zodiacal scorpions carved on Assyrian cylinders, the prototype of the Greek scorpion and claws. Both Libra and the sign it eventually superseded thus owned a Chaldean birthplace. Brown also says that the Euphratean Shugi or Sugi, the chariot yoke, which he identifies with Alpha and Beta of this constellation, remind us by sound and signification of the Zugon and Jugum of Greece and Rome respectively, and that astrology adds evidence in favor of a Chaldean origin, for it has always claimed Libra, the northern scale at least, as a fruitful sign, taking this form the very foundations of astrology in the Chaldean belief that when the Shugi stars were clear, the crops were good. In modern astrology, however, the reverse of this held in the case of the southern scale. It seems not unreasonable to conclude that in Chaldea the seventh sign had origin in all its forms. In classical astrology, the whole constituted the ancient house of Venus. For according to Macrobius, this planet appeared here at the creation, and moreover, the goddess bound together human couples under the yoke of matrimony. From this came the title Veneris Sistahs. Although others asserted that Mars was its guardian, astrologers of the 14th century insisting that whoso is born in Yat Sin or sign shall be an ill doer and a traitor. It was an influence, too, over commerce, as witnessed Ben Jonson in The Alchemist, his house of life being Libra, which foreshadowed he shall be a merchant and should trade with balance, and governed the lumbar region of the human body. Its modern reign has been over Alsace, Antwerp, Austria, Ethiopia, Frankfurt, India, Lisbon, Livonia, Portugal, Savoy, Vienna, and our Charleston, but in classical times over Italy, and naturally enough from its history, especially over Rome, with Vulcan as its guardian. It thus became Vulcani Sistahs, or Vulcani Sistahs. To it was assigned control of the gentle west wind, Zephyrus. This was the same as Roman Favonius, at first regarded as strongly blowing, but later as the genial Zephyrus, the life-bearing, personified as the son of Austrias and Aurora. Pious heathen called it Pluto chariot, in which that god carried off Proserpina, the adjacent Virgo, but early Christians said that it represented the Apostle Philip, and Ctesias identified it with the balances of the book of Daniel 27, in which Belshazzar had been weighed and found wanting.